A rabbi and a millennial walk into a web series. The rabbi turns to the millennial and asks, "What inspires you?" And the millennial says, "I am so glad you asked." In a world filled with small talk, we're all about the smart talks. Join the conversation.
Welcome to the second episode of Smart Talks. This is Rabbi Zalman Kravitz, and here is
Becky Bordeaux from Jerusalem.
Smart Talks is about engaging Jewish millennials with Jewish content to inspire Jewish values and critical thinking. Becky.
Was there anything that you enjoyed, that you really learned or experienced that sort of opened up your mind in a different way than from the last episode?
I loved how we got into the different levels of modernity. It forever changed my modernity. In fact, this morning, as I didn't want to get up because I have a little bit of a cold, I remembered the shot and remembered how big the intention is, and I got myself up and out of bed. So there was a lot of value for me from last lesson, and I hope there was for you guys.
We also gained from these conversations, and we really want to know what you thought about the last episode. So feel free to put in the comments and interact with us and share feedback. And as we go, this really will be a conversation with all of us.
And even if it's just about the cat, like if you want more cat in videos, let us know. I'm really sorry about the cat.
Oh, come on. It was amazing. That's really what is so good about these conversations, that they're natural. We're just having conversation, just talking. Let's just jump into this week's idea. And I think that this week will be able to set the stage for all the coming weeks. So last week, we talked about the whole idea of Pirkei Avot and the sages of the Talmud and their wise wisdom and what we can learn from them. And there's a vast amount of learning. And for us, we could spend hours and hours, even lifetimes, going through every single element and trying to distill what the lesson is and how we're going to apply it to our own lives, how we're going to apply it to entrepreneurship, family, experiences,
everything,
interacting with friends, everything. We chose a Mishnah, which is a section of the chapter of Pirkei Avos, chapter 6, Ethics of Our Fathers, and it reads like this: the Torah is greater than priesthood or sovereignty. For sovereignty is acquired with 30 virtues, and priesthood 24. The Torah is acquired with 48 qualities. And so it's very interesting that when priesthood and sovereignty are talked about, it's talked about virtues. So this is something that's different than something that's qualities. So what is the difference between a virtue and a quality? And I think that has to do with, in Judaism, a priest is not just someone who decides, okay, I'm going to put on a collar and become a rabbi. A priest is someone who is born into the tribe of Levi, who is a Kohen, and he has been chosen through his lineage by God to serve in the temple in Jerusalem. So that's not something that is necessarily something that they are a career choice. This is something that they're born into.
Wow.
A king is something that's hereditary. It's something that, because your father, in Judaism, it's a monarchy, so that anybody who's a descendant of King David and Solomon has the potential, could pass down and be a Jewish king. What's interesting about Torah is something that anybody can acquire. Knowledge is something that anybody can acquire. It's through learning and exploring that we can acquire knowledge, being curious, asking questions, delving deeper. And so this Mishnah, what's really cool about it is it goes into all 48 qualities of what a person needs to do in order to acquire Torah.
Yeah.
And I think that those things have a broad application, not only in Jewish knowledge and Torah, but also in one's life, whether it's at work and entrepreneurship, and has broad-based application. And I thought that was really exciting and a way that we could really structure our conversations.
So this is really interesting to me in that, you can be born in a specific family to a specific, lineage, but it doesn't matter. Like, yes, it matters, but also Torah is accessible no matter who you are. It's completely personal in that your Torah is a personal path. And that's that's nice, right? Does that mean that everyone can acquire this wisdom? Is that something that's completely universal?
Well, I think there's knowledge in everything, in every place. And I think that everybody, if you take just a little element of each thing that you learn from someone or something and you apply it to your lives, we can all be better people.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge. And just as a quick call to action, we have a chart that has all 48 qualities mapped out on a beautiful PDF, download in that by 11. So please, click on the link below, download the chart, and as we go through it, we're going to have different ways to apply it to our own lives. So we're looking forward to seeing you downloading the chart.
Yeah. So can we use this chart too, Rabbi? Is this something that you and I can take for the weeks ahead and take a couple values off the chart and explore together?
That's the plan.
Oh.
Let's just jump into it, and let's start with the first value.
Cool. I'm into it.
So the first value is Talmud, which is learning. And I think that learning is acquired. The commentaries explain that there are two elements. One is that learning is something that has to be diligent. It has to be constant. You have to have that value of learning and that desire for knowledge and the constant exploration for knowledge.
You know, it's interesting because there's a lot of people in my life that will look at where I am in my process of learning and say, oh, that's because you're young, you know, or oh, that's where it's a phase of life. And I wonder, like, maybe it's a phase. I don't know how young I really am. But all right, could it also be that perhaps you've in some way convinced yourself that you don't need to learn anymore, or that you've learned enough and that you've kind of fallen into this lull where there's this kind of like complacency and there's this like apathy to learning more? And look, I'm not one to say that one way is better than the other. I just always push back when people say, oh, that's something that's just for you. I think everyone has accessible to them this desire for learning, and that sometimes it takes one step towards a community that fosters learning or towards a learning path that like reignites that desire to connect in you. And then suddenly like parts of your mind are like alive again, and things around you take different color, and things have more meaning, and you have more energy. So to all those people pushing back on, you know, try it. Again, I'm gonna keep saying try it because Judaism is just so experiential, but I thought I'd share a little bit of that in case you're pushing back saying, ugh, but don't you just arrive at like knowing enough? Didn't I do enough college? Can't I just be in life now and stop learning? Well, it doesn't have to be so much. It can really add a lot of flavor.
I think that that's a good point, and I would add to that the second quality is learning from every person. It's not always the academic learning that are the most important lessons. It's the learning that we can learn from the conversations we have with the people around us. It's the learning that we can have from the people at work. It's the learning from the person who has a little bit more experience, a little bit more, or even less, just the simple question of like the innocence of a child asking just a simple question can go like, boom, I never saw something like that. And that's a profound lesson to help us acquire that.
I love that. To me, I really see the godliness in everything. So even if it is a child that says something, I'm like, well, what is like the divine source of all things? What is the creator trying to tell me through this person, through this child, through this person that knows more than me, through my coworker who I think knows less than me, through my friend who just arrived in class, like whatever it is, through the bus driver who's yelling. Like I feel like everything can be a lesson if we want to learn from it.
And I think that one thing that's very important is that it needs to be an active experience.
Yeah.
So they tell this story of a professor who every year would give these lessons and give these lectures, and many of them were very in-depth and analysis and deep with sources, and he would constantly record them so that he could review the presentations beforehand, and he would play those recordings for his students. And, over the years, he decided, you know what, why do I actually have to waste my time teaching these students when I already have the recordings? I've already done all the hard work. Let me impart the knowledge with them. I'll use my time in a more beneficial way by doing some research or setting up some meetings one-on-one. Let them just listen to the recording. The next week, he takes his projection, he takes his recording, and he puts it on the desk and clicks play, and he walks out of the room. And the students are looking at it and they're like confused. They're not sure. Okay, what do we do? How do we do it? But the knowledge is still there. The information is still there. So they sit and listen. And then during the week, one of the students had a bright idea. He said, well, if the professor is recording his presentation, I might as well take out my phone, put it on the table, click record, and I don't have to waste my time sitting through his lecture if he's not even there. So all the students decided they'll put their phones on the table, click record, and they all walked out. As they're walking out of the next week's class, the professor's like, where are you going? He's like, well, you pressed play, we pressed record.
Wow.
And I think that's a phenomenal mashal, a phenomenal parable to how active learning needs to be. It's both directional. It needs to be the back and forth. It's the debate. It's the iron sharpens iron. By questioning and delving back and forth, it is through that process that we gain knowledge, and it's through that learning. There's a interesting saying that says, "Lo mipi sfarim, mipi sofrim." It's not from the books, but from the writers of the book and the practitioners, the teachers that we gain knowledge. And so while you can have a library of knowledge, you can have an encyclopedia, a Wikipedia of all the information that you're looking for, but if you don't take the time to learn about the context, if you don't take the time to ask the questions, if you don't take the time to delve deeper, then, like we said last time, turn it over, for everything is in it. That is the critical element of what we're trying to accomplish through the learning.
When you have a great teacher, you're not just getting information, you're not just getting facts, you're getting so much of their, added input and added life experience and wisdom and energy behind it. I have some teachers that I'm just in their presence and I feel like I'm growing, like being around them by osmosis. So I think there's huge power to that. It's true. And I think that's, to me, first of all, if I record a class, I'm not going to listen to it later, as much as I tell myself I will. Maybe when I'm on the elliptical, if I ever make it to the gym. But even if I do listen to it, it's not the same. There's something about being energetically in a room with other people, learning, studying, feeding off of the live energy of a teacher. It's completely different. And to me, like having a class or having something set every week that I go and show up to, means that I'm accountable. It also means that I'm actually going to grow in that space, because I'm totally going to put it off if I don't have to show up to a classroom.
Yeah, totally. Which is interesting that, there was a Inc. article. There was an article that was a book review by, I think, a guy named Brian Evans. He talks about how many books the average CEO reads.
Yeah.
We just said that it's not from the books
that come knowledge, it's from the authors that come knowledge, the life experience. And I'd be curious to know what books those CEOs are reading. Are they reading literature? Are they reading poetry? Are they reading best practices in their industry? Just by looking at it and saying, oh, they read 4 books, and does reading those 4 books guarantee that I'll be successful in life?
I don't know. The question is how you do distill that knowledge. It's from the suffering. It's from the real life experience that we can gain the information that we need for success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and you can actually access lists that CEOs read, lists of books that the CEOs are reading. And I've gotten many incredible reads from these, like top CEO books, that you must get through in your lifetime. But I think you're right that ultimately the real wisdom is applied. And I wonder, like, the difference there that you might have, Rabbi, of reading a book versus actually putting it into practice.
Well, I think that always when you're learning from from the motivator to apply, right? You're not just learning because of theory, because you're learning in practicum. So even if it's in Jewish practice, you're learning in order to be able to actually apply what you're learning into your own life. Or you're learning a best practice on social media engagement. Learning that because it's important to you and you can apply it to your own life is something that's valuable. I think there's another lesson that we can explore here, is that if there's someone you want to learn from, don't be shy. Reach out to them.
Yeah.
We have access to people like never before.
Yeah.
We can go on to LinkedIn and message our mentors, our people who we years ago we would have only saw on TV or only read in history books. Here we can easily go in message or Facebook message or follow this person on Twitter, and we in real time can understand and learn from what that person is thinking about in the moment. That's powerful.
Absolutely. And a lot of people do want to teach. I used to ghostwrite for a couple influencers that do a lot of this sort of teaching how I became successful, entrepreneurship. People like Ty Lopez, who does a lot of how-to videos, all the way to Jake Paul, who's a young influencer. And a lot of these guys are super accessible. Maybe not one-on-one, but they do create content, and you can totally access that on YouTube, on social media. And they also have programs that you can become involved in. And also there's us. There is Rabbi Zalman Kravitz and Becky Bordeaux. We might not be these big influencers yet, but again, a lot of these dialogues are out there. The desire is what has to first be formed, and then suddenly you'll see yourself tons of information will just start coming your way. You'll be like, "Whoa, I didn't know there was so much to learn. This is really exciting."
That's huge, and I think that's a good point. Is that we're here for you to access, to email us, to instant message us, and we want to be part of that conversation. So thank you so much for joining us. We really hope that this will become a sustained conversation where Becky and I's conversation will spur further conversation and really become a dialogue with you, our community. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah. See you next week.
Right.
But seriously, come back.